Today's video takes a look at the Space Gamer number 3 from the winter of 1975. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer. This is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. Today's video continues our look at a magazine from the early era of the hobby. This is the Space Gamer. It's a product of Metagaming Concepts and Howard Thompson. It was a quarterly journal, and this is theirs from the end of 1975. Hope you enjoyed the video. So we're continuing our look at magazines from the early era of the hobby, as I mentioned. I just thought it was kind of interesting to take a look. We took a look, obviously, at the Strategic Review. This is a contemporary magazine or fanzine that was coming out. They mention each other in here. And so it's always sort of interesting to see what people are talking about and thinking about, I think, in the early era. Here's the cover to issue number 3. Here's a blow-up of the art. It's by a gentleman named Winchell Chung. It's Stellar Conquest Battle Scene. The Lone Dreadnought battles an attack group. Pretty nice, simple line art. Here's what's inside. Their frequent article called Where We're Going, where they sort of just talk about what's going on with the company and the hobby. The Escort Illusion is a comment on strategy for the Stellar Conquest game that they put out. Two Views of the Future talks about a couple of different sci-fi games and compares them. Ignoring Einstein and Newton is an article talking about the use of technology in sci-fi games. Letters from their readers. Sci-fi gaming news about what's going on in the hobby. Feedback on their number 2 issue. Some reviews, several reviews actually, from outside contributors. Sci-fi ratings, this is where they look at which games people like the most. And a diversion, which is a continuation of their sci-fi fiction that they have a little blurb of in each of these issues. You'll see over here, Howard is really happy to see that list of contributors. It was his goal, he said, to have 50 to 70% of the content provided by somebody who wasn't him. He clearly got it this time. Articles and contributions from Ed Cooper, Neil Shapiro, Scott Rusch, David Redding, Larry Pound, Winchell Chung, who does the cover art, Brant Bates, Janelle Jaquays, who does some interior art, and Steve West. So where we're going, and this is his commentary about what's going on with the company and the hobby. So first thing he wants to talk about is customer service and timing. He says, I know we were 3 weeks late with the Space Gamer number 2 and 4 weeks late with our delivery date for the Y3, and now a week late with this issue. He says, I know that's not what we want. It's not what you want. We're dedicated to that, but we're trying to turn out a good product, and sometimes it's taking us a little longer as we get our feet under us to get exactly the product we want. With the game Y3, he says, we had it done. We set it aside. We came back and looked at it and decided we could make it better. And so we decided to take the time, even though it would get out late, to do some rules revisions, cleaned up some of the content, and he thinks ended up giving you a much better game for the same money. They're going to increase the price of the Space Gamer. He said that's probably inevitable as costs go up and they try to increase the size, etc. Now, of course, they're paying for articles as well. And that's a point, I guess. They say they'll give you a small amount of cash or credit for your article instead of giving you free issues, which is what a lot of the fanzines would do. They do have enough subscribers to keep them going at this point, and they say that the subscribers who've already paid are going to get the current price applied, and so they'll get the same number of issues they expected. And also, you have a sort of a last chance here by the end of by December 1 to get your subscription extension in. He'd let you extend all the way up through issue 20 at the current pricing. That's a pretty good deal for people who are willing to take a bet. And in Space Gamer's case, bet pays off, right? Because they get several years of this magazine that comes out. They talk a little bit about the discounting. Remember, they would buy games and sell them to their subscribers at a discount. And they say that it works with some of the sellers, but not others. So they're just sort of talking through whether they can keep doing that. Should they have a larger inventory with knowing that some of those won't have a very good discount, or should they only carry games that give the good discount? They're sort of asking for feedback from the readers about that kind of stuff. And they're also saying they hope to increase, the size of the magazine subscription base, and then ultimately maybe they can increase from quarterly to bi-monthly, but again, only if they think they can maintain the quality. And then generally talking about their goals for the upcoming year, which is to get out at least 4 issues and maybe 6 if they can switch to every other month by the end of the year. Here's an article by a guy named Ed Cooper. It's reprinted from a magazine or a fanzine we'll talk about called Interstellar News. And this is basically a strategy for Stellar Conquest. And he's saying people overlook the value of this ship called an escort. And he goes through his logic of why too many people, he says, basically try to build like the biggest, strongest ships quickly. And what they do is end up starving themselves of resources by the time they get to the mid to late game. They've spent so much focus on these big ships that they don't have enough resources to build a big enough fleet to defend themselves. And so his thought for strategy is focus on improving your technology and your capacity for resource gathering and population early in the game. Use these ships called escorts early because they can go and scout. And the way this game works, you don't know what ship is coming. You just know there's a ship in proximity. That's what the warning you get. And so you can do some good scouting. You have a good chance of getting away. If you are discovered, gain some information about your opponents and also make your opponents react defensively to the knowledge that some type and some unknown number of ships have gotten near their home planet. So this is his tip. Then we have an evaluation and comparison of 2 different games, Stellar Conquest and Starforce. This reviewer really likes both of those. Let me see if I can. This is Neil Shapiro. Really likes both of these games. Says they're very different. Starforce is ship-to-ship kind of combat, and he said, but the difference is there's no killing. This is an evolved future where they have these folks who have mental powers. They can open teleportation gates to move their ships from one place to another, so faster than the speed of light. And when they enter into combat, it's combat between the mental powered people on each ship. And the result of those mental contests is that one person basically, his brain sort of like gets knocked out. They fall asleep. And if you can knock the other guys, all of his mental people out on the other ship, then you can cast that ship, use your mental powers to sort of teleport that ship away. Then there'll usually be a gate guarding a planet with lots of people with mental powers on there. So you'll need several ships with mental of your own. You get into another mental combat, you knock those people out. Now there's nothing protecting the planet. You can go down and take over the planet. And then Stellar Conquest, and that's sort of, you're very much at that sort of direct level. And then Stellar Conquest, he says, that's more like you're the emperor of a star galaxy, right, or a star empire. And it's all about resource harvesting and creation, building up things, how to sort of a civilization type game, right, where you've got to grow your empire, and your conquest or your ships are only a part of that. An inevitable part, right, where there will be conflict. And as he says there, the conflict will result in destruction and death of other ships and the other people. As he says, these are 2 very different games, different flavors. They're both really good for what they are. And they're going to be enjoyed based on what you like the most. Here's Scott Rusch's article, Ignoring Einstein and Newton, or What's Wrong with an H-Bomb? And the gist of this is every sci-fi game, he says, has all these newfangled, invented weapons and transportation systems and things like that. And he thinks they spend too much time creating all this imagined future. And really, as he says, a conventional warhead is a pretty potent weapon, even if you jump your head into a sci-fi future where people are in spaceships. And then the other thing he talks about is just generally he thinks people do too much of creating completely made up things. And he said you could basically just sort of take our society and push it forward a little bit, and then everything's going to be grounded in a world and science rules and everything that we already sort of understand. So, these wormholes and faster than light transportation, he says he doesn't think in your sci-fi you really need that, and he prefers one that's a little more grounded, a little closer to current reality. Letters, and lots of them, which is good for them. So this first guy is writing in just to talk about how much he enjoys his sci-fi games. And in the context of wargaming, he says, a lot of people play war games of a particular era, but it's a real history that we know. The challenge, of course, for sci-fi is you got to create a future that we don't know. He's a big fan of SPI's Starforce Alpha Centauri as an example of someone who's done a really good job with creating a new future that's well-rounded and well explained. He's a big fan of, and he's a big fan of this magazine. Second letter is a comment, just an excerpt of comments on Dungeons and Dragons. And this guy says, I think like a lot of people did back in the day, the rules here were pretty badly organized. Indexes would have done wonders. Explanations of the rules would have been really, really helpful. He says that combat's impossible to understand. And he said, basically, it seems like the people who wrote this assumed you really understood the system. And I think that was probably a fair criticism. The Gary Gygax did not think he was writing rules for people who'd never played a war game before. Turned out that's what happened. It really sparked a brand new entrance of people into fantasy, what he would have called fantasy wargaming, who had no experience with any wargaming before that, and they really just liked D&D. So, in any event, Gary gets better, and certainly by the time he writes AD&D, he has a much better grasp of how to write the rules. Although some people probably still think could have been better organized. I always thought the AD&D books were pretty good. Here's somebody talking about Stellar Conquest, and he said he just loves it, and then he's got some ideas for some rules they've added, because they say the game needs sort of another level of development. Remember, that's the one where you're developing your civilization, your star empire. He says we need more stuff to develop later on because we've already developed everything when we play by the time we get towards the end game part of that. Here's the next guy. He really likes issue number 2. He's glad that he had enough subscribers because he says, look, that's a really great sign that you've got the support you need. You need for your magazine to continue. And of course, as he points out, science fiction has thousands of possible permeations, right? Because you're not bound by history. You can create your own future however you want to do that. And then a couple people commented on the reviews of the games that were in there, because they said you divorced it from price. And so some people say maybe that would be relevant, like how good is it, like basically how good of a value is it, right? So, well, it's got 8 stars or 6 stars, but is it cheap or expensive? Maybe you get more bang for your buck. But I think ultimately people settle on the idea that, look, the bottom line is people will pay more or less for a game. They want to get the best game that's out there. And as we'll see, that continues to be, in their mind, D&D. And then here's finally one guy who says he doesn't understand these people who have all these different games because he finds a game he likes and he likes to play it over and over again. Right, here's one of my favorite parts of this because it just gives you a little flavor of what's going on. So this is the gaming news, and I'll just go through these quickly. Lynn Carter, Scott Bazar, Royal Armies of the Hyborian Age. This is a 64-page book of war game rules for the Conan stories. SPI has put out Sorcerer, a game of magical conflict. The Spartan, that's the magazine, issue number 9, they say, is worth grabbing because it has 32 pages of the rules about Warlock. In other words, these are the rules from a gaming group on the West Coast. And I think it was subtitled How to Play Dungeons and Dragons Without Playing D&D. It's good stuff and a good historical insight to how people's D&D games evolved. Creative Computing is a magazine, so you may want to get this. It's especially if you like Super Star Trek, ICBM, and Lunar. It's a good issue to get if you're into computer games. Walter Buchanan has Diplomacy World. It's a publication for diplomacy gamers. Mark Laymaster has a computer-generated character list for D&D or Tunnels and Trolls. You send him $1 and he sends you back a random list of 10 characters. Kelly Mormon has several games going and has a associated fanzine or newsletter called Interstellar News, and the one article they had here came from that. The Battle of Five Armies is a game from the Lord of the Rings. Pursue and Destroy is a wargaming magazine. Third Millennia Inc. Was reported to have been defunct, but there are some orders still being fulfilled, but they don't really have any more information. Luzoki is in here, basically saying, look, you can reach out to him. He sells just about anything on the market. And then Galaxy 2 is a computer program from Brett Trondrew, and I think he was in the first issue talking about his game. Here's their feedback. What did you like about the Space Gamer #2? Basically, this news section I just went over. The update, this was a new ideas for Stellar Conquest, where we're going, which is their discussion, and on down through here. Different ratings. Pretty decent. All right, now we get to reviews, and there are a ton of these. The first one they have here is Tunnels and Trolls. And as he says, this is, I'll say the word derivative of D&D, but this guy who is from Scottsdale talked, and of course that's where this game came from, the Phoenix area, Ken St. Andre, and then put out by Flying Buffalo, Rick Loomis and those guys after the very first draft. They repackaged it, reprinted it. Interesting here, he says 2 things you'll notice right away about it. He says there's no sexist bias in TNT because female characters and male characters don't have any adjustments. You just roll the stats, and like in D&D, right, there were some adjustments down for, I think, like strength, maybe size, height, and weight as well, based on your sex. And then character creation, they swap out, wisdom goes away, and they add a new stat called luck, which they use for basically saving throws in a number of other situations. And all they use are 6-sided dice. None of the other dice are used. He talks a little bit about combat there, which, as he explains, is more of a group versus group, and you roll dice and you compare your die roll to their die roll. Whoever had the higher number comes out on top of that round, and then the difference determines how much damage essentially is sustained by the guy who had the lower roll, be that the monsters or the characters. So it's a little easier, a little faster, and a little more lighthearted, I think, as they describe it. He liked it quite a lot and said, it's a different vibe, but has become sort of the most popular game around the Phoenix area, at least, and of course been played in places all over the world. Okay, Star Probe from TSR, a different type of sci-fi game, this guy says, but one that he likes quite a lot, and you basically are going to staff yourself up, get your equipment. You have minimal resources to start, and the goal is to go out into the universe and take those resources and turn them into more over time as you play, right? Find worlds to conquer, resources to exploit, etc. Stuck in the middle of the review section, we have their game ratings, and here you see D&D comes out on top, followed by Stellar Conquest and a number of other games. War of the Worlds 2 did not get a positive review. A half-hearted attempt by one of the third world war game manufacturers creating a playable sci-fi game. He says, you get the feeling what you have here is you got to beat the deadline or get fired type of a product. And so he did not like this game. Then we've got 2 reviews from Larry Pound. The first is Siege of Minas Tirith, and he loves it. He said it's great. It's very playable. The rules are good. The components are good. The scenarios are good. And the balance between, good and bad's ability to win are also set out pretty well. So he liked it quite a lot. And then he had the Battle of the Five Armies, which he did not like so much. Again, he says he's got 3 scenarios. One is the typical good guys versus the bad guys scenario from the book. But then you can also play through what if the orcs didn't show up and the dwarves ended up fighting with the humans and the elves? And then finally, what if Smaug was still there and the dwarves went in to try and kill Smaug? He says this game I think is fair, and it's interesting, right? Because he said, well, combat and everything, the rules worked really smoothly in the other game. Here he said they were very clunky, took too long, and the action sort of bogged down. Alien Space, a sci-fi game of space battles, supposed to remind you of Star Trek. And this guy, Steve West, he liked it quite a lot. And then finally, we get our fiction. And as you guys know, I really enjoyed this sci-fi fiction. It's a little serial. You get a little piece of it every time. And this main character is in the future, and it's a tournament. And your players, like you're playing Stellar Conquest, and you go into your little room with your computer, there's other people playing the game with you, sort of like we would play today on a computer. And you play it's a tactical game, and you play. And again, I think it's really, really well done. I'm drawn into the story. I like it. I want to know what's going on. I'm eager to look at each next issue and find out what goes on with this character's story. And here on the back, we have a little drawing about the Dreadnought, which is a spaceship in Stellar Conquest. And so here's the blow up of that. He draws a very detailed sort of architect's drawing or engineer's drawing of the spaceship. Half of it's the outside, half of it's the inside, to show you where different things are located. He's got a little key here where the artificial gravity is, the controls, crew quarters, ammunition, life support, fuel, weapons, all that stuff. And he's trying to show you his view of how that works. A couple other pieces of art by Janelle Jaquays. We've just got a dreadnought, 3 dreadnoughts, I guess, here shooting through space on the left, and then a little warrior-looking person here on the right. And that's our look at the Space Gamer number 3. I think a much less well-known, less popular magazine from that early era, contemporary of the Strategic Review and soon to be the Dragon. And we're going to take a look at a few more of these, and then we'll probably move on to a different magazine. We're certainly not going to run through the entire 76 issues of Space Gamer here all at one time. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Hope you're enjoying this series, and I hope you're subscribed. If you have friends who might enjoy what we do, please send them our way, and hopefully they will be subscribers and become part of our community as well. Have a great day. Until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.